I swear I wasn't trying to be clever when I said it. Her voice had been steady, almost clinical. We shouldn't be doing this. And mine, lower, sharper than I meant, slipped out before I could pull it back. Then why are you smiling? That was weeks ago. Or maybe it was days. Time feels blurry when someone gets under your skin without meaning to. I keep replaying that single exchange in my head, like a song caught in a loop. I first noticed her at the shop, not in a dramatic way, but in that small, ordinary way you catch a detail and it refuses to leave you. The place wasn't much: grease-stained floors, a bell on the door that never rang right, an old radio muttering classic rock no one really listened to. She walked in wearing a slate gray blazer, the kind that made her look like she belonged somewhere else entirely. An office, maybe, or a courtroom. Her heels clicked too sharp for a place that smelled of oil and old tires. She was older than most people who came in, but not old. More like weathered in a way that made me feel both younger and exposed. Her hair was pulled back neatly, but strands had fallen loose around her face, like even her discipline had its limits. She leaned on the counter where I was stacking invoices, eyes scanning the mess of papers like she could fix them if I handed them over. "You're new here," she said. I nodded, fumbling with the stapler. "A few weeks. Still figuring out which wrench is which." She smirked. "Then I'll make sure not to ask for anything complicated." I should have laughed, but I didn't. Not really. I just kept staring at her hands. No rings, nails short, one knuckle faintly bruised like she'd caught it on a door. Something about that tiny imperfection kept me from looking away. Her name, Elena, came later. She wasn't my boss exactly, but she managed contracts for the company that owned the shop. The kind of person who appeared without warning, checked figures, and made grown men straighten their backs without being asked. Everyone said she was tough, sharp, the type you don't waste words on. But when she spoke to me, there was a softness under it. Not obvious, just enough to make me wonder if she meant to let it slip. One afternoon, I was under the hood of an old Chevy, sweat dripping into my eyes, when I heard her behind me. "You're going to strip the bolt if you keep twisting like that," she said. I froze, wrench still in my hand. "You, know cars?" "I know how not to ruin one," she replied, stepping closer, the faint scent of her perfume cutting through grease and gasoline. She didn't take the tool from me, didn't lecture. She just stood there, close enough that I could feel her watching. I tightened the bolt again, slower this time, and when I glanced at her, she gave the smallest nod, like a teacher letting a student pass. There's a thing that happens sometimes when two people stand too close for too long. Silence turns heavy, thicker than the air itself. That's what I felt in that cramped garage, with her shoulder nearly brushing mine, and the radio hissing static in the corner. I cleared my throat. "So, am I doing it right now?" Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Better." And then she walked off, leaving me staring at the half-fixed Chevy, my pulse hammering like I'd run a mile. It wasn't a date. It wasn't even flirting. But that moment, the tilt of her mouth, the pause before she turned away, lodged itself in me like a splinter I couldn't dig out. I kept thinking about it, about her. The way her voice dropped when she spoke to me, the faint smudge of ink she carried on her fingers, the way she smiled when she didn't mean to. And that's the part one can't shake. She was smiling. I wasn't expecting her to show up again so soon. It was late. One of those evenings when the shop felt abandoned, machines sitting quiet, the smell of oil heavy in the air. I was sweeping, half thinking about heading home, when I heard her voice behind me. "You really do work the long hours, don't you?" I turned. Elena stood in the doorway, the last of the daylight at her back, making her silhouette look sharper than usual. She wasn't in her blazer this time, just a pale blouse and dark jeans. Somehow, that made her presence more unsettling, less official, more human. "Trying to look useful," I said, leaning on the broom handle. Her smile barely reached her eyes. "Careful with that. If you look too useful, they'll never let you leave." She crossed the room with a folder tucked under her arm. Papers, contracts, whatever it was she did for the company. But when she laid them on the counter, her shoulders sagged, just enough for me to see something she probably didn't mean to show. Tiredness. Not the kind from work. The deeper kind. I don't think she noticed me watching. I offered her the chair behind the counter. She hesitated like she didn't want to seem like she needed it, then sat anyway, rubbing her temple. You okay? The question came out before I could stop it. She exhaled slow. Just a long day. Too many people talking at me, not enough listening. That line stuck with me. I wanted to say something back, something that would make her feel like I was listening, but the words didn't line up right in my head. So I busied myself with the coffee machine in the corner, pouring her a cup even though it was bitter and stale. When I handed it to her, our fingers brushed. Just a second, but it felt like the room had tilted. She looked at me then, really looked, and I noticed her eyes weren't just sharp, they were tired around the edges, the kind of tired you can't hide with makeup. Thank you, she murmured, softer than I'd ever heard her voice. She opened the folder, pretended to work, but her mind was elsewhere. I could tell by the way she tapped her pen against the paper, absent rhythm, gaze unfocused. And me, I kept stealing glances. At her hands, ink faint along her knuckle. At the way she pushed her hair behind her ear when it fell forward. At the way her laugh slipped out unexpectedly when I muttered about the broom being older than me. That laugh, it was quick, almost reluctant, like she caught herself giving too much away. I wanted to ask about her day, about her life, about why someone like her looked both strong enough to run the world and exhausted enough to want to escape it. But I didn't. I stayed quiet, sweeping in long arcs, pretending not to notice how close she was. Eventually, she closed the folder, stood, and adjusted her blouse like putting armor back on. I should go, she said. But there was a pause after the words, like her body hadn't caught up with her mind. I nodded, though I wished I hadn't. As she reached for the door, she stopped, just for a heartbeat, and glanced back at me. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to say something, then shut again. That unfinished sentence hung in the air long after she was gone. The storm had been waiting all evening. By the time I locked up the shop, the rain was coming down in sheets, hammering the roof so hard I could feel it through my boots. I didn't notice her car until headlights flickered across the puddles. Elena was parked just outside, wipers fighting uselessly against the downpour. When she stepped out, holding a thin coat over her head, she looked less like the unshakable manager everyone respected and more like someone caught off guard by weather she hadn't planned for. You'll drown out there, I called, unlocking the door again. She hesitated before coming back inside, dripping water on the concrete floor. Her blouse clung damp against her arms, hair loosening around her face in dark strands. Thanks, she said, brushing at her sleeve. Traffic's a nightmare. Figured I'd wait it out here. I nodded, pretending to busy myself with the radio. Truth was, her being here, at night, with thunder shaking the windows, made the air inside feel too tight. We sat at the counter. I offered her the last of the coffee, and she wrinkled her nose but took it anyway. The storm gave the room a strange intimacy. No music, no machines, just rain pounding and the occasional low rumble of thunder. You live close? I asked. Far enough, she answered, staring into her cup. Close enough that I shouldn't complain. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was tentative, fragile, like a thread between us neither of us wanted to snap. After a while, she pulled out her phone. The glow lit her face, softening the lines I'd only noticed in passing before. Her lips parted as she read something, then pressed together in a way that told me the message wasn't good. You okay? I asked. Her thumb hovered over the screen. It's nothing. Just, she stopped, locked the phone, and set it down hard enough that it rattled against the counter. She tried to smile, but it didn't hold. For the first time, I saw something raw slip through her composure. Not weakness exactly, but something close. Without thinking, I said, you don't have to hide it. Not with me. The words hung between us. Too honest. Too much. Her eyes met mine, startled, searching. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then gave a short laugh that didn't match her expression. You shouldn't say things like that. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to reach across, to push her phone aside and tell her I meant it. But I didn't. I stayed where I was, gripping the edge of my chair until my knuckles whitened. Thunder cracked, closer this time. The lights flickered. She shifted toward me, almost unconsciously, as if the storm itself had nudged her nearer. I felt her shoulder brush mine, just barely, and my chest tightened like the air had vanished. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Her hand rested on the counter, inches from mine. My fingers twitched before I pulled them back, too fast, pretending to adjust my sleeve. She noticed. I know she did. The storm roared on outside, but inside the shop, the louder sound was the silence between us. Charged, unspoken, unfinished. When her phone buzzed again, the spell broke. She stood abruptly, muttering something about needing to go, gathering her coat. I didn't stop her, but as she reached the door, she glanced back at me. Just once. Long enough that I almost stepped forward. Almost. And then she was gone, leaving the storm to swallow the night. I told myself I wouldn't stay late that night. But I did. The shop was nearly dark except for one lamp over the counter, throwing long shadows across the floor. I was counting receipts I didn't care about when I heard the door creak. Elena. She stepped inside, not dressed for work, just a dark sweater and slacks, hair loose around her shoulders. Something about her looked stripped down. Not polished, not sharp. Just her. You're still here, she said, half surprised, half resigned. So are you. She gave a faint smile at that, but it didn't last. She crossed the room and sat on the stool opposite mine. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The quiet between us felt different this time. Not tentative. Heavy. Finally, she let out a breath. What are we doing? The words hit harder than I expected. Not loud, not accusing. Just bare. Like she'd been carrying them too long, and they slipped out before she could stop them. I swallowed. I don't know. Her eyes locked on mine, steady and searching. The silence after was worse than any answer I could have given. She leaned forward, elbows on the counter, hands clasped. You're young. Too young for. She cut herself off, shaking her head. For this. Whatever this is. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that age didn't matter, that she wasn't too much older, not in the ways that mattered. But I didn't. Instead, I just studied her face, the tiny crease near her brow, the faint smudge under her eye like she hadn't slept. You say that, I said slowly, but you're here. Her jaw tightened. That doesn't mean I should be. I couldn't argue with that. Not without admitting things I wasn't ready to. The clock on the wall ticked, every second sharp in the stillness. She rubbed her palms together like she was cold, though the air was warm. Sometimes I wonder, she murmured, more to herself than to me, if I'm just looking for something in the wrong places. That cracked something in me. I'd never heard her sound uncertain before. Vulnerable, yes, but not like this. Maybe it's not the wrong place, I said, softer than I meant to. Her eyes flicked to mine again, sharp, almost wounded. She didn't reply right away. She just stared, long enough that I felt like she could see right through me. The silence stretched. My chest felt too tight. I wanted to reach across the counter, close that gap, but my hands stayed where they were. Finally, she spoke, barely above a whisper. You make me forget how lonely I am. And that scares me more than you think. She pushed back from the stool then, stood quickly, and gathered her coat, as if she couldn't bear to linger a second longer. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving me with the words echoing in the dim shop. You make me forget how lonely I am. And I knew I wouldn't sleep that night. It wasn't supposed to be a long night. Just paperwork, a few calls, the usual. But she came in again, this time carrying a small bag instead of her folders. Elena, I said, trying to sound casual, though my pulse betrayed me. She gave a faint smile, set the bag down on the counter. Relax. I'm not here to check your invoices. That alone unsettled me. She looked different. Hair loose again, softer clothes, no trace of her usual armor. Like she'd shed the version of herself the world demanded and was left with just her. Bad day? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she opened the bag, pulled out a stack of papers, then hesitated. Not work papers. Photographs. She slid one across the counter, face down. I turned it over. A younger man stared back at me. Late 20s maybe, strong jaw, eyes too familiar. He looks like you, doesn't he? She said, her voice barely steady. I swallowed hard. The resemblance was real, uncanny, even. But I stayed quiet, waiting. Her hand brushed the edge of the photo, almost protective. He was my brother. Younger. Reckless. Always trying to prove something. She paused, eyes flicking to mine. He died. 12 years ago. Motorcycle accident. He thought he was invincible. The weight of her words sank in. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry. I managed, though it felt too small, too shallow for what she'd just handed me. Her lips curved in something like a smile, but her eyes didn't follow. You remind me of him sometimes. Not just how you look. The way you talk. The way you don't realize people are watching you more closely than you think. I gripped the photo, staring at it until my throat tightened. I wasn't him. But knowing she saw echoes of someone she'd lost made the air between us shift. Is that why you keep coming back? I asked quietly. Her gaze sharpened, then softened again. Maybe. Or maybe I just like the way you listen. Silence followed. Not heavy this time, but fragile, as if one wrong word might break it. She reached for the photo again, her fingers brushing mine as she pulled it back. The touch lingered, unintentional maybe, but enough to set my chest hammering. I wanted to move closer, to tell her I wasn't her brother, that I was here, alive, wanting her in ways I couldn't name. But all I did was sit there, hands trembling under the counter where she couldn't see. Finally, she gathered the photos, slipped them back into the bag. Before she closed it, she looked at me one last time. You make me remember, she whispered. And I don't know if that's a gift or a curse. That night, I walked home under a clear sky, no storm this time, but my chest still felt like it had weather in it. Because I knew, whatever line we thought we were holding, it had just shifted, and neither of us could go back. The shop was nearly empty of sound that night. No storm, no radio, just the hum of the fluorescent light above the counter. Elena was already there when I arrived, sitting on the same stool she always chose. No folder, no bag, nothing to excuse her presence this time. Just her. I stopped in the doorway, unsure if I should speak. But she did first. We can't keep pretending this is nothing, she said quietly, eyes fixed on the counter. Her words weren't sharp. They carried no warning, no defense. Just tired truth. I stepped closer, slow. I know. She looked up at me then, really looked. No shield, no half-smile to cover what she felt. Just a woman who'd carried too much for too long, finally letting someone else see the weight of it. I don't want to ruin you, she murmured, voice cracking just slightly. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because the idea of her ruining me felt so backward. You couldn't, not even if you tried. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. The silence stretched, warm and raw, filling every inch of the room. I pulled out the stool beside her and sat. We didn't touch it first. We didn't need to. Just being there, shoulder to shoulder, felt like admitting more than any words could. Her hand rested on the counter, fingers curled loosely. I let mine drift close enough that the warmth of her skin brushed against me. Neither of us moved away. It wasn't a bold gesture. It wasn't even a kiss. But in that small contact, something surrendered. After a long while, she exhaled. I keep thinking about how wrong this should feel. And it doesn't. That's what scares me. I turned to her, met her gaze, and for once I didn't look away. Then maybe it isn't wrong. Her eyes searched mine, waiting for me to flinch, to pull back. I didn't. Instead, she leaned forward, not to kiss me, but to rest her forehead against mine. The faintest pressure, soft and trembling. My eyes closed, and in that moment, the whole world felt stripped down to just that. Her breath against me, the scent of her hair, the quiet hum of the light above us. We stayed like that for what felt like forever, saying nothing, letting the silence answer everything. When she finally pulled back, her eyes glistened but steady. She gave me the smallest smile, real, unguarded, fragile. This is us, she said, almost a whisper. And I knew then, it wasn't about rules, or age, or fear anymore. It was about the fact that we'd already crossed the line simply by needing each other. We sat in that silence, hands brushing, shoulders nearly touching, letting the moment close in around us. Not a declaration, not a promise, just a quiet collapse into something we couldn't undo. And somehow that was enough. It's strange, looking back now, how something so small, a smile, a brush of her hand, could shift the entire rhythm of my life. When I think about Elena, It isn't the dramatic moments that stay with me. Not the storm, not the arguments, not even the night she whispered that I made her forget her loneliness. It's the quiet, the silence that somehow said more than either of us dared to. I used to think love was loud, that it had to be fireworks, grand gestures, declarations shouted across crowded rooms. That's what you see in movies, what you grow up believing. But with her, I learned it was the opposite. Love, or whatever this was, didn't need to be announced. It lived in the small things. The way she leaned her forehead against mine when words failed. The way she laughed at a joke she didn't mean to. The way she looked at me as if I was both a reminder and a possibility. Those things changed me. Made me softer, maybe. Or braver. Probably both. And she, well, I can't speak for her. But I know she stopped hiding as much. The armor slipped more often. She let me see the tiredness in her eyes, the sharp edges dulled by years of carrying too much. And in return, I let her see me, not just the kid everyone thought I was, but someone who could hold a part of her world without breaking under it. It wasn't about fixing each other. It wasn't about filling some void. It was about being willing to sit in the quiet together without needing to run. Sometimes I wonder if people would understand. Probably not. The world likes neat categories, and we never fit in one. Too old, too young, too risky, too complicated. But then I remember her words. This is us. And that's enough. It doesn't need explaining. So what did I learn? That connection doesn't ask for permission. That it sneaks up in late nights, in accidental smiles, in the silence after someone says the thing they shouldn't have. I learned that the lines we're so afraid to cross don't always mean what we think they do. Sometimes they're not walls at all, just shadows. And when you step through, you realize you were already on the other side. If you've stayed with me through this story, maybe you've felt a piece of it too. Maybe you've had your own Elena, or maybe you are someone's Elena, without even knowing it. Either way, don't ignore the quiet moments. Sometimes they're the loudest. So tell me, have you ever had a connection you couldn't explain, one that made no sense but changed you anyway? And that's where I'll leave it, with her smile still lingering, and the silence that somehow said it all.